Enewetak and Bikini, sparkling necklaces of coral reef, studded with tiny islands in the mid-Pacific Ocean, are remembered largely because of bombs, 50 nuclear tests in 12 years. Down there, scientists from the University of Washington Laboratory of Radiation Biology, under an Atomic Energy Commission contract, study after effects of the test as they have intermittently since 1946. Their purpose is to find out how much radiation remains and what has changed on the reef. What has happened to fish and other living things in the lagoon? To birds and land animals? What kinds of plants have come back? The answers they find will be useful as the United States increases peaceful use of atomic energy. The islands, except those devastated by war, were lush with coconuts and other tropical vegetation before testing began. And happy, industrious people once inhabited these atolls. They lived on fish taken from the warm waters of the lagoon and on the wonderfully useful fruit of the coconut palm. The Micronesian islanders found every necessity for life on their islands. The restless surging sea provided all things, even the coral reefs and islands which form an atoll. Surely one of nature's curiosities, all a product of seawater. The Central Pacific Ocean provides the warm water and strong currents needed for widespread reef building. In this vast area, atolls are the typical land formation. Their unique formation has aroused much curiosity and many theories as to their origin. One theory holds that every atoll begins as an ordinary island. Reef-building animals gain footholds in the surf, and their skeletons form coral rock. Over immense periods of time, the island sinks so slowly that the growing coral keeps up with subsidence. The original island disappears. Storm debris on the coral reef builds low islands where plants eventually appear. The whole visible surface at Enewetak rests on more than 4,000 feet of coral. Thus, pounding surf built the Marshall Islands in the mid-Pacific Ocean. The Marshalls came to world attention as battlefields in World War II. The wreckage of war rusts away on the reefs and beaches, marking places where men battled for these tiny but strategic islands. A stranded cargo ship, once loaded with supplies for war, gradually yields to the pounding sea. Soon another mark of war will be gone, as nature slowly but surely claims the litter of war as its own. In the interests of national defense, atomic tests, one detonated from this control ship, next riveted world attention on these atolls. Boiling radioactive clouds erupted over Bikini in 1946 and intermittently at Bikini and Enewetak for 12 years. Massive hydrogen bomb explosions, which erased whole islands and left others barren, climaxed the tests. The testing raised questions and fears about whether these stricken islands could ever recover. Could plants and animals become re-established at this scene of almost total destruction? No one knew. There was only speculation. Speculation is one thing, facts another. That's the reason the expedition is here, to get facts. Now, in 1964, the islands are green again, but gaping water-filled craters remain. Some are small, others are a mile across where an island vanished. But flying over the islands isn't enough. Researchers must probe and search to learn what has happened to biological processes that form the life chains linking man with the tiniest plants, fish, and animals on these atolls. This is science in the field, a far cry from the well-equipped laboratories at home. studying problems of the future, using transportation of a generation ago, World War II landing craft. The slow but sturdy old boats take the scientists to islands around the atoll from the home base on Enewetak Island. This study requires a number of scientific specialties to understand each aspect of atoll biology, including an expert on rats, another on shellfish, and a marine biologist. On today's trip are specialists in radiation detection, marine radioecology, botany, forest soils, a fisheries professor, and the expedition historian. The day's work is laid out by Dr. Lauren R. Donaldson, laboratory director, on the left. Islands scorched and barren 6 years before are in sight. What's the party looking for? Let's ask a scientist in the group.
We want to determine what kind and how much radioactive material remains and its effects. You see, a nuclear explosion produces radioactive counterparts of many elements, known as radionuclides. These may be absorbed by living things on land or in this strikingly clear water. We are investigating the after effects of this radiation, a question bearing on the compatibility of nuclear energy and human life.
The scientists find that external radiation on the islands has dropped to levels safe for people. Plants are growing again. Just getting through them is tough going. Bumpy for the photographer, too. Old-fashioned elbow grease and a machete are necessary in some places. Pipe driven into the coral soil brings up rainwater, evidently safe for plant growth, good even for drinking, except for a slightly salty taste. Coconut trees are coming back after being completely wiped out by the tremendous blast and heat of the test explosions. Nuts have floated across the lagoon from undamaged islands and sprouted on the salty, gravelly beaches. Thus, nature reestablishes a primary source of food and material necessary to the normal life of the islanders. The scientists study fish, the other primary food source in the Marshall Islands. They spread rotenone, a drug which paralyzes the gills of fish in a pool behind the reef. Why do you want the fish?
Well, we want to know if there are any observable abnormalities in the fish and if all the species are there that inhabited the area before the nuclear test. We also want fish tissues for radioactive analysis at the university. Fish are one link in the food chain between microscopic sea life and man. We're finding all the expected species, and none is dangerously radioactive.
But fish are caught first and tested later, even those that are a bit slippery, in the bag. The warm water over 80 degrees Fahrenheit the year around makes for pleasant diving and abounds in beautiful fish. The squirrel fish with its big eyes. The damsel fish. The grouper. The mullet, an important food fish the world over. The razor-sharp spines on the tail of the surgeon fish say, "Handle me with care," and experienced fishermen do just that. The outer reefs, borderline between land and sea, where the long Pacific swells trip and fall, teem with life. Tiny organisms nourished by the surging sea swarm in nooks and channels. Here the scientists find a puffer. It looks like a fat little guinea pig, but it's a real fish, so puffed up with indignation that its fins double for ears. the restless sea, pulsing and surging through the porous coral reef, cleanses, restores, and nourishes the atoll it created. Coupled with nature's ability to recuperate, the restoring, diluting power of the sea produces amazing results at Enewetak. In 6 years, the gross results of nuclear testing are fading before nature's elemental power. The outer reef is becoming clean and healthy. Given time, the same power of nature may restore the entire atoll. The Enewetak survey is complete. It's time to move on to Bikini, another atoll with an atomic history. The scientists board a ship, the Radioactive, chartered from the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands. They take their equipment along, every item they will need at Bikini. The ship will be floating headquarters, laboratory, sleeping quarters, mess hall, and warehouse. And the Radioactive is underway, bound for Bikini. The next morning, Bikini appears on the horizon against a golden sunrise. As the day brightens, flying fish skitter away as the ship approaches the typical low atoll islands with deserted towers left from the testing program. We anchor in a crystal clear lagoon, complete with a welcoming committee that will never be far away during the expedition's 2 weeks at Bikini. The ship-to-shore taxi, ancient and sturdy, inspires more affection than confidence. Customarily loaded with copra, the old boat heads for shore, this time with a cargo of scientists. The helmsman and engineer, native Marshallese, are proud descendants of generations of skilled seamen and fishermen. Is this as lush as it looks?
Yes, if you note that you see only occasional coconut trees here on the fringe of blast damage, 20 miles from the test, shattered stumps alternate with surviving coconuts.
The graceful ferry tern is one of the most numerous and noisy birds in the atolls. In fact, there may be more birds than ever because there are no people to disturb them. Were you surprised to find so many birds?
No, not particularly. Birds can fly in and quickly repopulate a devastated area if they find suitable habitat. But finding birds in abundance is one indication that life is returning even to these hard-hit islands.
Obvious physical damage remains. Where small islands closest to the explosions lost their surface soil in the heat and blast, full recovery is slow. But even on these stricken islands, marine life flourishes wherever the sea can reach and nourish. Scurrying hermit crabs relish coconuts tossed up by the sea. They don't make their own shells, they just use discarded ones of other invertebrates. The speedster of the beach, the shore crab, moves sure-footed as a mountain goat, even on slippery rocks. For recreation, expedition members easily pick up many beautiful shells from the beaches. The curious hieroglyphic clamshell looks man-made, but it isn't. Snail shells come in many shapes and colors. The cat's eye is used by Marshallese to make jewelry. Some reef animals are collected and studied alive in the laboratory. As with most invertebrates, the snails contain only traces of radioactive material. The sea has worked its magic along the reefs, restoring normal life chains after the shattering explosions. The scientists even find coral and reef animals growing in the bomb craters. The expedition's marine biologist tows fine nets to catch plankton for analysis. Composed of tiny plants and animals, plankton is an important link in the marine food chain. Coral, the reef and atoll builder, feeds on these tiny organisms. Thus, scattered amounts of radioactive material formed in a nuclear blast and dropped into the sea might be picked up by plankton and then find their way into coral. The university scientists often enter the silent, colorful world beneath the surface of the lagoon, where shadows chase one another across the fantastically beautiful coral and fish, but they find no significantly radioactive coral. Does the lagoon bottom seem normal?
No, not in all cases. We find heavy layers of silt in some areas, which apparently have smothered coral, algae, and even the giant clams. But silt doesn't seem to bother fish. The silt is powdered coral, created when explosions ripped out huge craters. This is significant damage, but it's interesting that it has nothing to do with radioactivity. It's an effect of the blast.
At the end of each day, tired, footsore scientists return to the copra boat for a slow ride back to the ship, where their treasures of the day, plants, soil, coral, fish, birds, crabs, snails, algae, and other prizes, are taken aboard. Giant clams still live in the unsilted areas of Bikini Lagoon. The clams, immobile on the lagoon bottom, survive nearby explosions. Some radionuclides are deposited in clam shells, making valuable records of changes in the water's radioactivity, much as a tree's rings record wet and dry years. They are saved for study at the university. Various tissues concentrate radioactivity differently, so the expedition's invertebrate expert dissects the clams for analysis. There is no automatic elevator to the below decks laboratory. The scientists learn to handle trays as skillfully as restaurant waiters. Ovens dry the prepared specimens, preventing spoilage of the tissues. This space, a cargo hold, customarily holds copra. Work in the airless, sultry hold often goes on for hours after sunset before the scientists finish drying, wrapping, bagging, and sealing the day's specimens. The coconut crab is the one food species on Bikini still unsafe to eat. While building a shell, the crab absorbs strontium-90, a product of nuclear explosions. What are you sampling here?
Well, as you know, the lagoon bottom is the ultimate resting place of materials dropped in the water. So we want to do radioactive analysis of bottom samples. Normal bottom, not pulverized by an explosion, looks a little bit like rolled oats, made up of algae and coral debris. One interesting find is a small ocean turtle, which have always been few in number at Bikini. We have seen a few tracks on the beaches where turtles had crawled up sandy beaches to bury their eggs, but we never caught one before. The wide-ranging turtle, not pertinent to our study, is released.
Lizards, introduced as food on one island long ago, give the scientist ideas. A homemade noose, a crafty hunter, and the intended prey. Easy, easy. Oops. Oh well. Rats are the only mammals on most of these islands. These rats are more than 25th generation descendants of ancestors which survived blast and radioactivity. The expedition's expert on rats looks for gross inherited abnormalities. Dissection, organ by organ, reveals apparently healthy rats. Nevertheless, studies of rats at Bikini and Enewetak will continue during future years. Such information answers questions about atomic effects on animals. Atoll rats, apparently completely normal despite severe radiation exposure to their ancestors, are mounted for students' use in a university laboratory.
Sometimes our regular collecting chores are interrupted by such rare and unexpected sights as two eagle rays playing in shallow water. The bat-like fish seem to fly through the water by flapping their fins. Eagle rays grow to 7.5 feet wide from tip to tip. Bikini, damaged severely 6 years before, is a lively place as our survey ends.
Late on the ship's bridge as the captain charts an overnight cruise to Radioactive, another Marshall Island atoll. Scientists rise early as the ship approaches Radioactive, eager for a look at the atoll. The laboratory has studied radioactivity at Radioactive, and the scientists are well known to the people. The children have a great time in their natural playground, and they know just how to make sailboats from chewing gum wrappers. But their fathers have more serious business with their boats. That business is fish from the lagoon, a fundamental food resource which the University of Washington studies have shown to be safe to eat. Radioactive's trees are the other basic food source. Breadfruit is a staple food in the tropics. Some of the radioactive material in the soil is taken up by the roots and finds its way into the fruit. Samples collected and sent to the university for radioactive analysis over the years show that radioactivity has declined to where the fruit is safe to eat, and breadfruit has returned to its place in the Radioactive diet. The all-important coconut, which doesn't readily take up radioactive fallout material, provides food, building material, and animal feed. Copra, dried coconut, is the only cash crop here. Husking the nuts on a wooden spike takes skill rather than muscle. Coconut makes a nourishing baby food and sometimes is used as a medicine. The tree's sap can be fermented into an alcoholic drink. And finally, the coconut husks can be used as fuel to bake breadfruit. Pandanus fruit, once radioactively contaminated, is once more a children's favorite. It develops good jaw muscles, too. Tree studies continue at Radioactive. What are you looking for?
For just about everything related to the rate of growth of coconut and other trees in this part of the world. So every trip here, we make careful measurements and record them. Eventually, we'll add to the body of knowledge about the coconut, which is so important to the Marshall Islands. Tags help us keep track of specific trees. nutrient-deficient coral soils are a problem. We've added such minerals as iron and manganese to the fertilized tree in the background, which is the same age as the little yellow one in the foreground.
There are always plenty of willing helpers at Rongelap, and they pitch in to help load pandanus, breadfruit, and coconuts aboard the ship. The expedition is leaving Rongelap, but memories of the atoll and its resourceful people will remain long after the scientists are back in their university laboratories. The people are back to their old self-sufficient ways. Their atoll, once considered hazardously radioactive, again provides a livelihood. Nature has erased the radiation hazard at Rongelap. Life is back to normal routine. The Rongelap people, clean, sociable, energetic, are wonderfully adapted to atoll life, the same as that formerly led by their neighbors on Bikini and Enewetak. The relaxed, rhythmic existence of the tropics, mothers' songs, the shouts and laughter of playing children could be heard even now on all the test islands, if radioactivity were the only problem. But these people depend on natural food chains extending to the tiniest creatures of the land and sea. At one time, we expected little recovery growth on the atolls. Now, as the expedition leaves, we know that Rongelap is back to normal, and remaining damage on Bikini and Enewetak is rapidly healing. Impressive evidence of nature's ability to bounce back. Dramatic illustration of nature's toughness and resiliency in the face of forces undreamed of by our forefathers.